talked to a lot of people over the years, especially as I, quit, and then everybody's asking me about quitting. Well, that's what they want. They don't love what they do. They're unfulfilled by their work, but everybody's got their story. And so rightfully so. I'm not saying like it's an excuse, but a story. Often if I'm talking to somebody that wants to do this, what I can quickly pick up is that they're exploring with me what my advantage is that they don't have, so they can dismiss the effort. In other words, your wife works and she's a lawyer or a doctor and she makes a bunch of money. They want that. And I'm like, no, because it's like, oh, if that was the case, then I could stop right there and say, oh, see, yeah, I can't go any further. But stories like yours or the other people that we interview on this podcast are that, like, there are other people that have, like, my challenge in quitting my job, I'm afraid, from a healthcare perspective, I have kids with special needs, or I have a kid on the autism spectrum, or a parent with cancer, or whatever it might be. Everyone has their challenges, which is why I think it's important to highlight. I don't think I know, and you're an example of this, like perfect, quote unquote, perfect life is not required for you to be able to fulfill what you think is best for you in your life, in your business and or career endeavors. Fair?
Absolutely fair. I do not have a perfect life. I'm not a perfect man. I didn't create perfect circumstances while I was working, nor did I create them in leaving. And there are moments when my kids are particularly hard, and I don't think you need neurodivergent kids or kids with other special needs to have these moments when you think, I walked away so I could have more of this. And with that said, I'm so profoundly grateful to have had the amount of time I've had with them over the last year and a half. We're recording in November of 23. I left at the end of January 22, and I've seen more of my kids in the last year and a half than I had in probably the entire decade that I practiced law, which has been an incredible blessing. But you're absolutely right about human nature, and not just in the context of should I quit my job or shouldn't I. We're always looking for the unfair advantage that someone else had to excuse our own, whether it's fear or just laziness or just staying in our own comfort zone, right? Well, I could never do what she's doing because of X, Y, and Z. I could never get in good shape because, well, she was born in third base and her metabolism is a lot faster than mine is, or, that guy's definitely taking steroids. That means I should not even try to go to the gym.
That's a good example. That's a really good example. That last one in particular, they're all good, but Tribe listeners, I have an extremely exciting announcement for all of you. Do you want to come hang out with Cody Sanchez, David Osborne, David Green, Rich Roll, and even yours truly down in Austin, Texas? Well, let's do it. May 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, for the first time ever, GoBundance, the exclusive millionaire membership group, is opening up an event to anyone, man, woman, millionaire or not, and we're calling it the Austin Entrepreneurial Summit. At the AES, you'll meet all those people I mentioned, plus GoBundance members on both the men's and women's side, and I'll be there hanging out the entire time. Every event I've ever attended for GoBundance has given me a disproportionate return on the money spent and the time spent to get there. And this is the biggest one that GoBundance has ever done. So if you're a member, not a member, and you're looking to supercharge the second part of your year 2024, this event in May is a great way to get that all kickstarted. Go to GoBundance.com/AES right now for early bird pricing for members and guests. And warning, the power of GoBundance events is that it holds you accountable long after you're gone to achieving whatever goals you've set. So this event will change your life. GoBundance.com/AES. I'll see you there. Let's get back to the show. I like that. All right. So when in the time of being an attorney and why did you want to quit?
So I started practicing in 2011, and I enjoyed many aspects of it for a few years, especially while the work was more project-based and I was just being told what to do and I could go execute. Once I started getting more exposure to strategy and more one-on-one experiences with clients or just being in those meetings, it hit me more heavily that I was being paid to take a side of an argument, whether I thought it was the right argument or not. And not necessarily morally, but just I would look objectively at the law and the facts and come up with my own conclusion of what I thought the right legal outcome would be. And then I would have to go argue the opposite one sometimes because that was just the right outcome for my client. And there are people who can do that very well in the legal profession. I'm just not one of them. It pricked my conscience when I had to do that. And so a handful of years in, probably 2015, 2016, I started looking at what else could I do? Should I maybe become a judge? Because at least a judge is an impartial arbiter of the right legal outcome. But boy, if I become a judge, I'm going to lose half my income, even as a mid-level big law associate. So how could I supplement it? And that led me to starting to think about real estate investing and how could I create, more passive income just to supplement. I didn't end up doing that. I actually went down the road a little bit with local politics. And let me tell you, Mr. Gruber, early 2016 is an unusual time to get involved in local Republican politics. You're looking confused, but
this is the Trump era.
There's a different candidate profile in those days. So I was not long for local politics, not necessarily because of what happened with the presidency, but more I learned more about the process of becoming a judge, and it was not all that I thought it would be. So I started looking for other things to do. Ultimately, Joya, who by this point had gotten her master's in nursing, she's a nurse practitioner. In 2018, she hung out her own shingles, started Nourish House Calls, a functional medicine house call practice here in suburban Chicago where we live. I was helping her on the business side as I could, in fits and starts in the evenings and weekends, but I was a busy lawyer. I wasn't doing a ton for the business. We started thinking about what could I do? What else could I do to help grow the business? It was actually a conversation I had with you, Jamie, in October of 2021. We went to lunch because I was up in Michigan and I was pretty miserable practicing law at this point. And you really reframed the way I looked at the notion of leaving my job. And you said, well, don't think of it as leaving the law forever. What could you do for the business if you had 6 months to devote all your attention to it? And my answer was, I could do a hell of a lot. Do you have 6 months of runway? Yes, I do. What's the worst case scenario? What happens if everything goes to zero? Well, I could always go back and be a lawyer again. I wouldn't love it, but it wouldn't be the end of the world. So what's stopping you? And so I didn't stop. Instead, I went home and I said to Joya, hey, here's a conversation I had. What do you think of this idea? And she, having had zero time to process this, complete change in her life and her identity, because now, we together would be sole breadwinning, but through her business. Give me until Thanksgiving to think about it. This was, mid-October. But then we went away for an anniversary trip in early November, and we were sitting at dinner, and she said, I'm in. Let's do it. And I just wept. All of the stress, all of the emotional weight of a decade of really, really doing something that I had grown to dislike for the past few years of it just flowed out of me. And we waited until after the first of the year to give my notice so that I could get whatever bonus I was going to get. And fortunately, that was not, it added to our runway. And then I was done on January 31st, 2022. And that 6 months has turned into a year and a half of working to grow this business.
It's closer to 2. You're only like 2 months away from 2 years. So,
yeah.
And that's something I think that it's funny from that, or maybe even before that conversation, I've had that same discussion, not same, but like a similar idea with some people. There is this notion, there's always this set of questions. It's like, what do you do for a living? I do this. Are they hiring? Yeah. If you left and came back, would they have a spot for you? Oh yeah, I could. Most people, like, I can get my job back. Yeah. Or something close or whatever, right? Like, okay, so then don't quit. Like, that seems so big and there's so many questions and it's like this, just take a slice out of it. Like 3 months, 6 months, take a sabbatical, call it something different, and then see what happens. And you're the example of it. Like, I bet you that it's going to be really hard for you to see your way back into that. It's going to be do or die, and you're going to go roll forward. So I think I remember moving down here to the Dominican. It was like, okay, schools, car, what about insurance, health insurance, taxes? Like, all these things are like swirling. And then it was like, okay, let's go for 1 year. Instead of like, let's move and pick up life. Like, let's go for 1 year. Now we're on year 2. Right. Mm-hmm. But it's that first move, whatever's digestible for you, do that. And then the rest of it can kind of go with it. So I love that.
So I've got a question for you around that.
Hit me.
Because you hear a lot in personal development about burn the boats, right? The way to take the island is to not give yourself any way back. And if we were to take that, I guess not literally, but seriously, in leaving our jobs, we would do, is it from the Dave Chappelle Weed movie when the one guy quits? He's just like, F you, F you, F you, F you. You're cool. F you. I'm out.
I love that movie. Half-Baked.
Half-Baked, thank you. A lovely movie that doesn't make any sense from a plot standpoint.
Second time reference today, by the way. That's the second time randomly that movie's been referenced today. Anyway, go ahead.
I love it. I got to come up with a better movie reference before the end of this podcast. We would burn that bridge. Yeah. If we were really burning the boats, we would make it impossible to go back to that job. And maybe even put something out into the world that's incendiary about the whole industry. So I could never be a lawyer anywhere. And that way I'm fully motivated to hard charge forward. How do you think about that advice in the context of, this Tim Ferriss fear setting exercise where, well, reasonably the worst that could happen is I could always go back and get my old job back?
I think that there's good as the enemy of great. There's one cliche. There's, what's the other phrase about perfect? Like there's perfect and there's
perfect
done.
Be the enemy of the good. Oh yeah, done is perfect is the other one.
Done, yeah, right. Done is perfect, right? So I think burning your boats is perfect. It's perfect. It's the honestly, like if you can do it, if you have the stomach for it, like absolutely burn the boats. Like don't look back, only look forward. I get it. 99% of us aren't built that way. So I think the idea of a sabbatical or the fear setting saying go back to the job is the equivalent of done in this context of, perfect is done, right? So honestly, like if you can burn your boats, burn your boats. If you got it in you, do it. As long as I believe you have to have something you have to run toward, but burn the boats, sure. But just most of us aren't going to. So you have to find something between here and there, like leave the boat offshore to the extent, the distance to which you're comfortable swimming to it, right? Like as far as possible to swim to it, and then shoot an arrow with fire on it later. Like for instance, this podcast is called Holy Quit. Do you think I'm employable at this point? My boats are burning in the harbor right now, but it took me a year, 2 years to shoot the arrow at it, right? So I think that's the thing. It's like, I agree if you can burn them, burn them. But more ideal and more likely to put you into momentum is take the step that's the most comfortable outside of your comfort zone. Leave the boats in the harbor as far out as you can leave them. Not so it's easy to swim to them, but that you can in a pinch, and then roll forward and then burn them later. Thanks for tuning in. If you want to hear this entire episode, the audio links are down below. But if you want to see another episode that we think you would enjoy on this channel, click right here.